Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror comedy from the UK, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Alice Lowe, and this film is called Prevenge. So Prevenge is basically about a pregnant woman. She suffered a tragedy in the past that resulted in the death of her husband. Now, being pregnant, she has a lot of fear into what the unknown is as far as the future is concerned, and she holds a little bit of resentment towards things that actually happened in her past. And so there's a few people that she doesn't think kindly of, and then after a few days pass, she realizes that now her unborn child is actually talking to her. And the more she listens to the child, the more she's been brainwashed by this entity that she has to go and do horrible things. And so she's trying her best not to listen to the fetus, but it's basically getting too much to handle. So her life turns into a very bloody nightmare where she may not come out in the end. So whether or not she does is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Prevenge. This is a very interesting film. Alice Lowe is a very interesting person. Now, as far as directing is concerned, I hadn't really been experienced with her, but as far as acting is concerned, she's actually quite a decent actress. And I first saw her in the Ben Wheatley film Sightseers, where she played a very good role, a very psychotic role, and that was a horror comedy as well. And so being a British horror comedy, I definitely wanted to go out there and see this movie. Is that, alright, well, not only is this actress very good at what she does as far as in front of the camera, but what she like behind the camera. So I thought to myself, maybe she will take a little bit of what she learned from Ben Wheatley and actually make something of her own. And I will say that Prevenge actually demonstrates that she is fairly decent behind the camera. This is a lower budget, a horror movie, and I actually thought, as far as horror and comedy is concerned, it works for the most part. I thought it was actually quite funny. The dialogue was actually quite decent, and it actually made me chuckle. It is very British as far as the humour is concerned. There's no real slapstick humour, so it's all in the delivery of the lines, and I think Alice Lowe being the main, she's also in the main role of this movie as this pregnant woman. She is very good at what she does, and so not only is she good in front of the camera, she's also very good behind the camera. So it's definitely a movie where as I said, you have to make allowances for a lower budget, but the lower budget is used in a very intelligent way. It doesn't try anything too extravagant, and it doesn't really leave you scratching your head thinking that that particular moment was really bad. And so there's no real bad moment in the movie, but then again, the movie needs a little bit more to make it an overly memorable experience. Now, yes, there are some very memorable moments, but those memorable moments don't add up to a very memorable film. Now, I'll go into that a little bit later, but what I liked about the movie, as I said, there is a fine balance between the horror and the comedy, and neither of these genres take full effect. It's not overshadowing the other. And so I thought the fine blend is very typical of British humour, is that British horror comedies, they do have that line between horror and comedy in a way where it does complement each other. And I thought the complements in this movie, it is quite freaky in some instances, and it is actually quite funny without, as I said, tipping over to one specific genre in particular. And so that was decent. The movie goes for about 80 odd minutes, and it never really outstays its welcome, so it's very self-aware as far as the length of the movie is concerned. The acting was good, as I said, from Alice Lowe, who plays this main character. There is a little bit of depth to this character to actually indicate that she's a sympathetic person, and then you've got the supporting cast that all do a decent job, and it's a quirky style of film. So you've got some violence in the movie. Now, the violence isn't excessive, and it's not trying gore effects to a point where it looks cheap, and so it has a very realistic sort of feel to it as far as violence is concerned. The violence is actually quite nasty, and I think the realism and the lower budget feel to the violence helps give you that higher impact that the movie really wants. And so you've also got the cinematography that is very bleak. As I said, it's a very low budget movie, and I think the low budget plays to its effect in actually giving you something that's very grimy. The state of this woman's mentality was very vulnerable, and I thought the vulnerability was actually portrayed through the screen, and you could actually put yourself into the shoes of what this woman was going through. And so it is a film about motherhood, and motherhood during really tough times and trying to overcome tragedies in your life. And so for that, you will gravitate to this character in a way where you can relate to her, but at the same time, you're frightened by her. And so that gives you a very funny feeling as a viewer, is that should you be taking this woman's side or should you be against her? Now, yes, you're actually disgusted in what she's doing, but there is a reason as to why she's doing this. And so although you're not condoning it, it's not just a mindless sort of case of a maniac going around. And so I thought, right, well, that was interesting. You've got shades of Baby Blood, which is a fantastic French horror film. It's a classic French horror where you've got a cautionary tale about motherhood. And so there are shades of Baby Blood in Prevenge, but the Prevenge, it never really, it doesn't copy any other film. There are movies that you'll be reminded of, but being reminded of a film is basically as far as it goes. You never think to yourself that this is a carbon copy, or this is basically taking ideas and trying to make it, trying to pass off as a creative film. Is that it is creative, but it does feel like it's taking inspiration from other movies. And so if you liked Alice Lowe in Sightseers, Ben Wheatley's Sightseers, and you want to see her behind the camera as well as in front of the camera, then I definitely think this is a very interesting little movie. If I have a problem with this movie, is that it is trying to be that soul-searching film, is that this main character, what she's going through, but I still felt as though there was a level of shallow quality to this movie that didn't drive home as much as it really wanted to. Is that there are some very soul-searching moments and some very, hard-hitting moments as far as emotion is concerned, but I just thought it could have tugged on the heartstrings a little bit more if the depth was just a little bit more as well. And so you've got that superficiality to the film that just kind of prevents it from being an absolutely fantastic experience. And so it goes for 80 odd minutes, as I said, and it doesn't really give itself time to delve into the character depth that the movie really wants to. It hints at character depth, it hints at something that's going to be incredibly powerful, but the power's not there because it just doesn't dive into it enough. And so that is a problem with the movie, is that, yes, it is when you see the story, you've seen it done before, and you think to yourself, well, if they just had a little bit more time and effort to the overall situation, then maybe this could have been an absolute knockout film. But as far as lower budget movies are concerned, I definitely think Alice Lowe nailed it as far as horror comedy is concerned. It does have chuckles, but not to a point where the comedy is overtaking the horror, and vice versa with the horror. There are some fairly freaky moments, and it doesn't really overplay it as far as overshadowing the comedy, which is something that you want from this subgenre. So if it sounds like your kind of thing and you're a fan of British horror comedies, Prevenge is definitely one to check out. There is a cautionary tale there, but I thought the cautionary tale could have been used a little bit more, with a little bit more depth, and it really would have been a memorable experience. But pushing that aside, it's still an experience that I think was worth the effort, and as a result of that, I'm going to give Prevenge 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.